Finnegans Wake. Love it, hate it, or know nothing of it. It has been called the hardest book in the English language and has received a slurry of appraisal, ranging from the most negative and vile to the most positive and ecstatic. A brief selection of the former might include Joyce's brother Stanislaus's remark that it is an incomprehensible night book, or Ezra Pound stating, "Nothing so far as I make out, nothing short of divine vision or a new cure for the clap can possibly be worth all the circumambient peripherization." Or his patron Harriet Shaw Weaver calling it a wholesale safety pun factory. Or D.H. Lawrence saying, "Nothing but old fags and cabbage stumps of quotations from the Bible and the rest, stewed in the juice of deliberate journalistic dirty-mindedness." Or Nabokov scathingly calling it nothing but a formless and dull mass of phony folklore, a cold pudding of a book, a persistent snore in the next room, and only the infrequent snatches of heavenly intonations redeem it from utter insipidity. Nevertheless, I love this book. Finnegans Wake is my favorite book, and it has enraptured me for over a year of solid study. In that time, I have read countless pieces of secondary literature and read the work itself numerous times, and here I'd like to present to you an iceberg of Finnegans Wake. As these videos go, we will be starting above the water and descending deeper into its depths, going into greater and greater obscurity to explain some of the fascinating parts of Finnegans Wake. Characters, themes, diagrams, sentences, questions. All of these should help make sense of Finnegans Wake and give you a little insider tip into how to read it and some of the most important and well-known aspects of it. HCE is the main character of Finnegans Wake, and he goes by a number of names, chief among them being Humphrey Chimpton Earwicker, Here Comes Everybody, Hircus Chivus Eblanensis, and a number of others. But he can always be identified by his initials, either together on their lonesome like this, or acting as the first letter in a series of names. And he acts as the sort of central consciousness through which we have access to the goings-on in the form of Finnegans Wake. ALP, or Anna Livia Plurabelle, is our secondary character. She is the wife of HCE and is trying to help exonerate HCE from a crime that he has supposedly committed and which has been ramified throughout society. Anna Livia Plurabelle stands for the river Liffey, and thus Anna meaning river in Irish Gaelic, and Livia for Liffey, and Plurabelle for her all-masterful plurabilities, as Joyce would call it, is representative of the life force and the dynamism of language in the world. Therefore, she helps to vivify the language of Finnegans Wake and always send it trailing onwards. Anyone who knows anything at all about Finnegans Wake knows that it is a dream. While Ulysses was Joyce's day book, taking place over the course of June 16, 1904, Finnegans Wake is his night book, taking place over the course of one night and ensuing a flurry of characters, concepts, ideas, and settings. And the real question in scholarship is whether it is the dream of a singular person or many. I'm privy to what Kimberly J. Devlin has had to say about this, which is that HCE is the main dreamer because he is the main thing which is dreamed about. All of the circumambulations and perambulations of Finnegans Wake revolve around HCE, about his guilt, his questions, his concerns, his fears and anxieties. As such, Finnegans Wake plays a lot on psychoanalytic frameworks, talking about anxieties, cathexes, fixations. Finnegans Wake is famous for its first and last sentence, which are notably the same sentence, just starting from opposite ends. It begins river run and ends away, alone, alast, aloved, along the, and ends in an incomplete sentence, signaling that we have to go back to the beginning of the work. This is one of the most striking things when one opens up Finnegans Wake, and it signals the circular structure of the work. That every beginning is always already begun, and every ending is already the beginning of a new beginning. Joyce employs a number of different characters, and one of my favorite is a character complex called Mama Lujo, standing for Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. These 4 men become judges. They also become old men in a pub telling stories. And throughout Finnegans Wake, they serve as some of the main mediators through which we receive the events of the story. They help connect Joyce's work to a lot of the Christian mythology and theology that he wants to impress in the work, and they allow for a perspectival framing device whereby we can get 4 different perspectives of the same event, and Joyce will play on a number of the differences that will ramify through the story as a result of these different framing techniques. Persse O'Reilly is the alter ego of HCE when he has been condemned by the public, when he has been reduced to a mere earwig. Here we can see that HCE's name goes through a very complex changing process that allows for it to become Humphrey Chimpton Earwicker, earwicker connecting to earwig, earwig being translated into the French Persse, and becoming Persse O'Reilly. Hence, this Persse O'Reilly name is a symptom of HCE being reduced to an object of the earth, unallowed to transcend out of his bed and to wake up, and therefore pushed deeper and deeper into his subconscious and unconscious and into the framing devices of others. Thereby, this is really HCE's fallen persona that we see throughout. And HCE has fallen because he has committed some kind of crime. Now, we don't know exactly what this crime is, and it's part of the very nature of Finnegans Wake that such discrete events are not elucidated completely. But we know that it probably was sexually illicit in some manner. It probably occurred in public, probably the Phoenix Park. It also included 3 soldiers and 2 women. And it has made HCE well known, or perhaps infamous. Therefore, throughout Finnegans Wake, it is motivated by the unfolding of this crime, but also the sidestepping of its very contents. Because to look at it too directly would really be something too great for HCE's mind. Therefore, we are implicated in the twisting thoughts of HCE as he tries to discover and also sidestep his own actions. 1132 is a number that repeats over and over throughout Finnegans Wake, and it seems to be a critical year for the story, particularly because of the numerological symbolism. 1 and 1 signify the duality of the 2 brothers of Finnegans Wake, Shem and Sean. It also signifies the fact that no unity will do. We always already need duplicity or multiplicity. And 32 stands for 32 feet per second, the speed of gravity. Therefore, it symbolizes the fall which is ever present, compelling us down towards the earth, and yet compelling us to change, to duplicate, and to exceed any monolithic framework. Anyone who has opened up Finnegans Wake to the first page has seen the massive Baba Badal word. This is one of the 10 thunder words in Finnegans Wake, each of which is 100 letters, except for the last one, which is 101, and therefore adds up to 1001 letters, of course referencing the 1001 nights. These words are onomatopoeic conglomerates of a number of different semantic meanings, combined in such a way that they compact a sonorous punch, such as the first one, which is a bunch of different words for thunder in different languages. And it symbolizes the great thunderclap being bestowed by God on man and scaring them into submission, which is a theory from Guillaume Battista Vico, one of the main philosophical forefathers of Joyce. Therefore, the thunder words are one of the most visually appealing and available ways in which Joyce's language in Finnegans Wake goes beyond denotative value and goes towards connotation and poetic materiality. Finn McCool is the mythical persona of HCE. In Irish mythology, he is a giant, and in Finnegans Wake, Joyce has described the entire work as watching Finn McCool asleep along the landscape with the Liffey going around him. Therefore, Finn McCool symbolizes the mythical gigantism of the great heroes of history who can transcend and dominate the landscape, and he is always a height that HCE is trying to achieve. Because of HCE's fall, a letter is being ramified throughout Finnegans Wake, the goal of which is to exonerate HCE. It has been written by Shem, told by ALP, and transmitted by Sean. Therefore, it implicates a number of different personages, and we can see this in the varying descriptions we get of it. Chapter 1.5 is entirely dedicated to discussing the letter in the utmost detail, and yet, because of its digressive nature, like the rest of Finnegans Wake, we don't really get a concrete description of what it says. The letter is a great way of understanding how the language of Finnegans Wake always tends towards and implicates multiplicity. It always speaks for and through multiple voices, and testifies to the fact that no one narrative will do to account for history or narrative. One of ALP's alter egos is Biddy Doran or Belinda Doran, Biddy Doran being a hen and Belinda Doran being a bird. These are environmental, animalistic ways of discussing the way in which ALP allows for change to come about, but also how she interacts with the environment to recuperate the litters and turn them into letters. In the beginning of Finnegans Wake, we see Biddy Doran the hen picking up scraps from a letter from the midden heap of history and turning it into the letter that we read. Therefore, this represents the recuperative capacity of Finnegans Wake, that it takes the scraps left over from history, that which we would like to forget about, and it congeals it together and turns it into really a reflection and an epitomization of our discourse in history. The Doodles family is an accompanying title of a list of Sigla we get on page 299 in one of the footnotes of Finnegans Wake. These represent the different personages of the main familial characters in Finnegans Wake. We have HCE, we have ALP, we have Shem and Sean, we have Izzy, the sister, and we also have the letter, or Finnegans Wake itself. These different sigla acted as shorthand ways for Finnegans Wake to be talked about, and various aspects of it to be talked about in Joyce's correspondences and in his notebooks. This is one of the few instances that we get these sigla being used in Finnegans Wake, but most of the time they are of use for Joyce as a sort of shorthand and also a way of talking about character complexes and milieus of motifs that go beyond singular characterization. Kate and Sackerson are two important but very difficult to pin down minor characters of Finnegans Wake. Kate is transmuted in the beginning of Finnegans Wake into the Prank Queen, and she gives a tour through the Musée room where we go through history and we see a number of the tales of Napoleon and the Duke of Wellington. And Sackerson is one of the help of the HCE family. He is a Saxon, and yet he is also a darker man, and he represents a lot of the complicitous dynamics with racism and fascism and ethnocentrism that is steeped in the HCE family, because the HCE family is descendant from the Brits. Therefore, HCE is an Irishman, but precisely in the wrong way. He's a sort of exile in his own country, precisely because his lineage shows that he is not part of a pure place, either a place of residence or a place of ethnic purity. The daughter Izzy in Finnegans Wake is often accompanied by a group of rainbow girls. These can range from 7 girls to 29 girls, and they accompany her and act as the multiplicitous overflowing of the young female spirit that Izzy represents. Throughout Finnegans Wake, we see characters represented as insects. And there's an important psychic reversal that's going on here in Finnegans Wake, which is that one of the more subtle and dangerous possibilities for what the crime is that it entailed some kind of incest, potentially with HCE and his daughter Izzy. So one of the ways that HCE's mind protects against this incest is by reversing incest into insect. Therefore, just the reversal of those two letters, this transmutability of language and its reversibility, allows HCE to protect his mind and, for example, tell us varying ways of his history in the tale of the Aunt and the Grasshopper, which is one of the main insect chances we get in Finnegans Wake. Now, Finnegans Wake was not always called Finnegans Wake. As it was being serially produced and published, it was known as Work in Progress and was being published in, among many literary journals, it was being published in transition. Work in Progress has been the study of a lot of Joyce scholars since the publication of Finnegans Wake and the rise of genetic criticism in the field of Wake studies. And it is a central way by which we can see the developing narrative and styles of Finnegans Wake. Some of the more illicit personages in Finnegans Wake include a pair of sloppy sluts, which is the name for the two girls that HCE potentially committed his crime with in Phoenix Park. In the second chapter of the second part of Finnegans Wake, we have a detailed attempt by which Shem tries to teach Sean a geometry lesson. And the object and aim of the geometry lesson is to draw and discover the essence of an equilateral triangle, which happens to be the siglum, or the symbol, for ALP, the mother. Therefore, this is a journey of childhood discovery about the nature of sexuality, and it concludes in the middle of this chapter with this strange diagram which Shem draws to try to show Sean the nature of the mother. And it is very confusing, but we can imagine looking at a woman with her legs open from underneath, such that we have two butt cheeks, and in the middle we have the vagina. As such, this is a geometrical abstraction of feminine sexuality and an attempt by which Shem tries to teach his brother about the naturehood of maternity. As a result of this teaching process by Shem to Sean, Sean then goes on to kill his brother. And throughout the third part of the work, he goes through a number of transitions. First from Sean to John, and then from John to Yawn. So all of these keep a sonic similarity, but we can see that Sean is basically effacing himself into the night as he becomes Yawn, and then he eventually goes away. Finnegans Wake is the first novel to use the word television in it, and this shows how on the cusp of things Joyce was. He knew about the rising technologies of his time and wanted to implicate the progression of and the changes within his society within his novel. Therefore, there are a number of references to television we get in Finnegans Wake, and it's really interesting how he will oftentimes give us these very complex imagistic presentations of the manner by which television even works, down to its mechanics. While the standard is to read only one version of Finnegans Wake, which is basically a duplicate of the 1939 edition, there is a unique piece of secondary literature that a lot of scholars go to, which is David Hyman's first draft version of Finnegans Wake. This includes some of the earliest versions of each of the different serially published episodes of Finnegans Wake and brings them together in a way, including various revision marks, such that we see the early development of Finnegans Wake. A very interesting document for understanding Joyce's strategies and the way the text developed over time. One of the key linguistic devices of Finnegans Wake is the implementation of speech impediments, which is used to link the psychic dynamics of people with the mechanics of their body. For example, HCE, because of his crime, is very often a stammerer. Therefore, he will stammer through a number of words, often at very inopportune times, always showing his guilt through his attempt to deny it. ALP and Izzy both slur their words oftentimes and are unable to pronounce their R's and W's. Therefore, they have a sort of childish speech impediment that is seen as imposed upon them from men in the story. It is an infantilization of women which reflects the infantilizing discourse that men often portray and put onto women. In the first chapter of the second part of Finnegans Wake, there is a game going on between all the children of Finnegans Wake. Shem is to come up to Izzy and the Rainbow Girls and is to guess with his blindfold on the color of their panties. And if he can guess correctly, then presumably he wins some sort of sexual favor or some eruption into sexuality. And this is a game that is blocked by Sean. Sean acts as an oppositional character to try to prevent Shem from guessing the color properly. And Izzy continually tries to help Shem figure out the correct color, which is heliotrope. But the problem is, heliotrope has multifarious meanings, such that any time Shem guesses it, he can technically be considered incorrect because he wasn't guessing the correct meaning. Therefore, heliotrope represents the dynamic language of Finnegans Wake, the way that everything errs and flutters and flees from any one attempt at reduction. Fuite, or the Finnegans Wake Extensive Elucidation Treasury, is one of the key online resources for looking up glosses of passages in Finnegans Wake, figuring out intertextual references, figuring out puns and motifs. It's super great to know about, but it took me a very long time to even be aware of its existence. In the third part of Finnegans Wake, Joyce has signaled in many of his letters that he utilized the Via Crucis, or the Way to the Cross, as a formal technique, showing Sean's development through the 14 stages of the cross that is very common in Catholic and Orthodox art. This shows the way in which Joyce often uses tropes or traditions as formal devices for the development of the content of Finnegans Wake. Throughout Finnegans Wake, we see parodied a quote from Edgar Quinet's Introduction à la philosophie de l'histoire de l'humanité. I'll have it on screen here, but it goes through a number of transitions and shows the enduring quality of nature to supersede humans' creations. This is a really interesting quote because it signifies a lot of the ecological consciousness throughout Finnegans Wake. That any attempt at creation is already effaced by the productive capacity of nature to go beyond any one creation that we make. One of the most deeply hidden aspects of Finnegans Wake is the correspondence between Izzy and Joyce's daughter Lucia Joyce. Lucia was a schizophrenic and she was also a dancer, and Joyce was just obsessed with her. They had so much fun together writing and talking about languages and ideas, and Joyce was often entirely taken aback and taken up by concerning for her mental health in the later years of his life. This put a great strain on his writing, but we can also see a hidden vitality that comes from the youthful spirit of Lucia, but also her great psychological tragedy throughout Izzy's characterization. One of the least well-known facts about the characters of Finnegans Wake is that Shem, who is the alter ego of Joyce in Finnegans Wake, is scapegoated so much that he is often portrayed as a black man or a man of color of some kind in Finnegans Wake. This shows the racial consciousness and really the critical attitude towards race itself that Joyce imbued within his work, showing how, for example, blackness is often told through the mouths of the white man who tries to strawman and scapegoat and really invent some pure notion of race as an other to the white man and as subservient to the white man. And finally, we have the most mysterious riddle in all of Finnegans Wake. Told by the prank queen, it goes through a number of iterations, so much so that it almost loses its entire semblance of any one meaning. But it goes, "Why do I am a look-alike a Possef Porter piece?" I still have no idea what this riddle means, and neither do really any of our scholars. It so radically dispenses with English grammar rules, and most of the vocabulary seems English, but it's really not. Porter is, of course, a type of alcohol. But other than that, this is really lost on me, and it is one of the deepest, most hidden aspects of the riddling universe of Finnegans Wake. So that being said, that's it for this video. I hope it's been somewhat helpful in learning some of the various aspects of Finnegans Wake. You can check out any of my other lectures I've done on postmodernism, German idealism, gender theory, post-colonial studies, and other classic literature. You can also become a channel member for $5 a month and gain access to, among other things, a private philosophy Zoom, which you can tailor to your needs. I also have super thanks if you'd just like to donate to the channel, because it really means a lot to me whenever someone donates and helps me buy the books necessary to provide you content. That's it for this lecture, and I will see you in another one.